A new employee steps into a car dealership branch and quickly senses the thick, oppressive tension in the air. That tension comes from a ruthless manager who bullies employees and manipulates customers for profit. After witnessing the manager's unethical tactics, the new employee speaks up in protest. This act angers the manager, who tries to suppress him. But this new employee is not someone who can be easily bullied. He reveals his true identity, showing the manager who the real owner of this place is. The sun had just begun to rise over Riverdale, casting a soft golden glow across the quiet streets. The city was still asleep, but one man was already wide awake, preparing for a day that would change everything. His name was Jordan Carter, the CEO of Carter Auto Group, one of the most successful car dealership chains in the country. Unlike most CEOs, Jordan hadn't inherited wealth or climbed the corporate ladder through privilege. He had built his company from the ground up, starting with nothing but a single small showroom and a relentless drive to succeed. He knew the struggles of working-class families firsthand: the long hours, the paycheck-to-paycheck grind, the way people in power looked at you like you were less than. He had sworn never to forget where he came from. But lately, something was off. The reports coming in from his Riverdale dealership painted a troubling picture. Sales were down, customers were leaving unhappy, and turnover among employees was at an all-time high. But when Jordan asked his senior managers for answers, all he got were rehearsed excuses. "Customers are just getting pickier," they said. "The economy is tough right now." Yet whispers from employees told a different story, one of ruthless sales tactics, toxic leadership, and a growing disconnect between management and staff. Jordan wasn't the type of man to sit back and let problems fester. If something was broken in his company, he was going to fix it himself, and that meant going undercover. Standing in front of his bathroom mirror, Jordan took a deep breath. His reflection stared back at him, a man in his 40s with sharp features and eyes that had seen both struggle and success. He ran a hand over his neatly trimmed beard. It had become part of his image as a CEO, but today it had to go. With slow, deliberate strokes, he shaved it off, leaving his face bare for the first time in years. Next, he changed his hair, trimming it down and adding a subtle fade to make himself look less polished, more like an average working man. He put on a plain button-down shirt, slightly wrinkled, and a pair of well-worn jeans. No designer brands, no expensive watches. Just a man looking for a job. He chose the name Marcus Brown, common enough to blend in, yet familiar enough that it wouldn't raise suspicion. His backstory was simple: a former salesman from a small independent dealership looking for a fresh start. He practiced speaking in a slightly different tone, dropping the articulate cadence he had learned in boardrooms and returning to the natural rhythm of how he spoke growing up on the south side of Chicago. He knew that in places like this, perception mattered. A black man walking into a dealership as a CEO would be met with respect. A black man walking in as a job applicant, that was a different story. As he pulled up to the Riverdale showroom, he took in the sight of the large, modern building with its gleaming glass windows and rows of polished cars reflecting the early morning sun. It looked successful, but he knew that appearances could be deceiving. Taking a deep breath, he stepped out of his car and walked inside. The cool blast of air conditioning hit him first, followed by the sterile scent of leather and freshly waxed metal. A few employees milled about, some chatting at their desks, others scrolling through their phones. No one looked up to greet him. After a few moments, a tall, broad-shouldered man in his mid-40s strode toward him with an air of authority. Derek Moore, the showroom manager. His crisp suit and expensive watch screamed confidence, but his eyes, sharp and calculating, made Jordan instantly uneasy. Derek extended a hand, but his grip was just a little too firm, his shake just a little too slow, like he was testing Jordan. And then came that look, the subtle flicker of surprise, quickly masked by forced indifference. Jordan had seen it before. The split-second calculation. The quiet judgment. The way certain men looked at him and assumed they already knew who he was. "You must be the new guy," Derek said, his voice smooth but edged with something else. "Marcus, right?" "Yeah, that's me," Jordan replied, keeping his voice even. Derek's gaze lingered on him for just a second too long. "Huh. Didn't expect that name to come with, well, you." Jordan felt the weight of the words unspoken, but he only smiled. "Guess life's full of surprises." Derek smirked, but there was no warmth in it. "Yeah, guess so." He turned on his heel and gestured for Jordan to follow. "All right, listen up, Marcus. Here at Carter Auto, we're all about results. If you can sell, you'll fit right in. If not, he shrugged, letting the sentence dangle in the air. No room for dead weight. Got it? Tuh. Got it, Jordan said, though he already knew this wasn't going to be like any other dealership he had worked in before. This wasn't just about sales, it was about power. And Derek Moore. He was making sure everyone knew exactly who had it. Derek led Jordan through the showroom, his stride slow and deliberate, as if expecting Jordan to fall in line behind him like some rookie intern. The place had all the makings of success: sleek cars under bright LED lights, pristine floors that reflected the ceiling like a mirror, neatly dressed salespeople stationed at their desks. But something felt off. There was no energy, no friendly banter between coworkers, no warm greetings for customers walking in. It was sterile, transactional, like a machine programmed to do one thing: squeeze money out of people. They stopped at Derek's office, a glass-walled room overlooking the sales floor. Inside, a sleek desk sat untouched, as if he barely did any real work there. Derek gestured lazily for Jordan to take a seat but didn't sit himself. Instead, he leaned against the desk, arms crossed, eyes scanning Jordan like he was something to be sized up and sorted. So, Marcus, Derek said, drawing out the name like it didn't quite fit in his mouth. Tell me something. What's a guy like you doing here? Jordan raised an eyebrow. A guy like me? Derek gave a slow, knowing smile, the kind that wasn't meant to be friendly. I mean, most of the guys we bring in have experience at the big-name dealerships. Toyota, Beam, Lexus. You said you worked at what was it? An independent lot. Jordan nodded. Yeah. Small place outside Chicago. Learned everything hands-on. Built relationships with customers, made sure they got what they needed. Not just what made the dealership the most money. Derek let out a short, amused chuckle, shaking his head. That's cute. He turned, walking toward the window overlooking the sales floor, hands in his pockets. See, Marcus, that might have worked in your little neighborhood lot, but here. We don't have time for hand-holding. We sell cars. We push numbers. End of story. He turned back to Jordan, eyes narrowing slightly. You got a problem with that? Jordan kept his expression neutral. Not at all. Derek studied him for a long moment, then let out a sharp exhale, like he had just finished sizing up a second-rate suit. Good, because the last thing I need is some bleeding heart charity case wasting my time. Now, let's get you introduced to the team. Jordan clenched his jaw but said nothing, standing as Derek strode out of the office. He followed him to the center of the showroom, where a group of salespeople stood around a desk, flipping through paperwork and sipping coffee. They all straightened the moment they saw Derek approaching. All right, listen up, Derek announced, voice carrying across the showroom. This is Marcus Brown, our new guy. Give him the rundown. Show him how we do things here. And Marcus, he turned to Jordan, smirking. Don't embarrass yourself. Jordan gave a small nod, but inside his blood simmered. He had dealt with men like Derek before, the ones who thought their authority made them untouchable, who believed that a man like Jordan had to prove himself twice as hard just to be seen as their equal. But Jordan wasn't here to prove himself. He was here to expose the rot festering beneath the surface. As Derek walked away, one of the salespeople, a lean, sharp-faced man in his early 30s, stepped forward and offered a handshake. Will, he introduced himself, his grip firm but lacking warmth. Let's get one thing straight. You want to make it here. You gotta be cutthroat. No room for hesitation. He tilted his head toward a woman across the showroom, speaking with a couple near a sedan. That's Lisa. She still thinks selling cars is about honesty and customer service. Sweet girl. Won't last long. Jordan glanced at Lisa. She was smiling, explaining something patiently to the couple, clearly listening to their concerns. She stood out here not just because she was one of the only women on the floor, but because her entire demeanor was different from the cold efficiency around her. Will smirked. Now me. I do things the right way. The Derek way. He motioned toward a man walking through the front doors, an older gentleman, maybe mid-60s, with a tired but hopeful expression. Watch and learn. The man hesitated near the entrance, adjusting the baseball cap on his head. Jordan could tell right away this guy wasn't the type to buy on impulse. He was careful, calculating, probably spent months researching before finally stepping into a dealership. Will, however, saw something else. A target. He strolled over, his entire demeanor shifting into something polished and welcoming. "Morning, sir. What can we do for you today?" The man gave a small smile. "Looking for something reliable. A sedan, maybe. Just need something to get me to work and back." Will nodded thoughtfully, then without hesitation, clapped a hand on the man's shoulder and steered him toward the most expensive model in the showroom, a luxury sedan with leather seats and a price tag that would make most retirees sweat. "I got just the thing for you." Jordan watched, fists clenching. He could see it already, the way Will played the man, hyping up features he didn't need, making him feel like this was the only smart choice. And when the man hesitated, saying it was a little out of his price range, Will gave him a patronizing chuckle. "Sir, let me be honest with you. You work hard, don't you? Don't you deserve to treat yourself? I mean, come on. You're not getting any younger." Jordan's jaw tightened. It was manipulative, predatory, and worst of all, it worked. The man gave a nervous chuckle, scratching his neck, clearly uncomfortable but afraid to say no. Will shot Jordan a smirk over his shoulder. "See? It's all about confidence." Jordan exhaled slowly. This was worse than he thought. These weren't just bad sales tactics. This was exploitation. And Derek had built an entire culture around it. As Will finalized the deal, Derek reappeared, walking past Jordan and lowering his voice just enough to be heard. "Hope you're paying attention, Marcus. This is how winners do business. Stick with me, and maybe one day you won't just be another nobody trying to scrape by." Jordan met Derek's gaze, forcing himself to keep his expression neutral. But inside, something cold and steady burned in his chest. "Oh, I'm paying attention. And when I'm done here, you'll wish I hadn't." Jordan had spent the entire day watching, listening, memorizing every underhanded tactic, every dismissive glance, every predatory smile. He saw how the showroom operated like a well-oiled machine, not one designed to serve customers but to exploit them. It wasn't just about upselling. It was about control, manipulation. The moment a potential buyer walked through those glass doors, they weren't a person anymore. They were a walking commission check, a target to be broken down piece by piece until they gave in. And Derek, he was the architect of it all. Jordan kept his head down, blending in as much as he could, but inside, his patience was wearing thin. Every sale he witnessed felt like watching a slow-motion car wreck. Customers being misled about financing, pressured into unnecessary add-ons, bullied into believing they couldn't leave without signing a deal. And the worst part? The arrogance. Derek and his inner circle of top salesmen thrived off it, wearing their deceit like a badge of honor. They laughed behind customers' backs, mocked their hesitations, treated honesty like a fool's game. But then came the moment that tipped everything over the edge. Late in the afternoon, a young black woman walked in, pushing a stroller with a toddler inside. She looked nervous, her fingers tightening around the handle as she took in the gleaming rows of cars. The cold, evaluating stares of the salesman. Jordan noticed her shoes, slightly worn but clean, the kind of practical flats that spoke of long shifts and careful budgeting. She wasn't here for luxury. She was here because she needed a car. Before Jordan could step forward, Derek moved in like a shark scenting blood. His entire demeanor changed, slipping into something that mimicked warmth but never quite reached his eyes. "Well, well," he said, flashing a smile that didn't touch his voice. "What can we do for you today, miss?" The woman swallowed. "I'm looking for something affordable. A used sedan, maybe. Just need something reliable to get to work and drop my son off at daycare." Derek nodded slowly, pretending to consider it, but Jordan could already see the setup coming. Of course. You know, I've got just the thing." Without waiting for her to respond, he gestured toward the back of the showroom, where the higher-end models were displayed. "Come on, let me show you something that's going to be perfect for you." She hesitated. "I was thinking something more." "Trust me," Derek cut in smoothly, guiding her forward with the kind of practiced insistence that made refusal feel impossible. "You don't want some old beater breaking down on you in the middle of traffic, right? Especially with the little one." He shot a pointed glance at the toddler, who blinked up at him with wide, unknowing eyes. The woman bit her lip, her grip on the stroller tightening. I don't think I can afford." "Now, hold on," Derek interrupted again, chuckling softly like she had said something foolish. "Let's not assume anything. I mean, you work hard, right? Don't you deserve something nice? Something safe? His voice dripped with condescension, the subtle emphasis on you making Jordan's jaw clench. He could hear it beneath the surface. That unspoken message that men like Derek love to wield. People like you never expect to have nice things. People like you don't belong in luxury. Let me show you what you should want. Jordan saw the shift in the woman's posture, the way she shrank slightly under Derek's gaze, torn between wanting to stand her ground and the suffocating weight of expectation pressing down on her. He had seen it before, had felt it before, the way the world made people like them feel small, like they should be grateful for whatever scraps they were given. His fingers curled into fists. Derek wasn't done. Tell you what, he said, flashing a knowing grin. I'll talk to financing, see if we can work something out. Maybe even stretch things a little. Get those monthly payments down so you don't have to stress. I mean, I'm sure you've got a— He paused just a fraction too long, his smirk widening. Support system, right? The air in the showroom tightened. Jordan saw it in the flicker of discomfort in Lisa's eyes from across the room, in the way a few other salespeople averted their gaze. They knew what Derek was doing, but none of them said a word. Jordan had had enough. Maybe she'd like to see something within her budget, he said, his voice cutting through the space like a blade. The showroom went silent. Derek turned slowly, eyes narrowing. What was that, Marcus? Jordan stepped forward, his expression unreadable. I said maybe she'd like to see something in her budget, instead of whatever game you're playing. Derek chuckled, shaking his head like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. You're new, so I'll let that slide, he said, his tone light but laced with warning. But around here, we let the professionals handle things. And you— He gestured vaguely at Jordan, eyes flicking over him in a way that felt deliberately dismissive. Are still just a rookie. Jordan met his gaze, unflinching. Rookie or not, I know what I'm looking at. And I know what you're doing. You're pressuring a hard-working mother into a car she can't afford so you can pad your commission. And worse, you're talking to her like she should be grateful for it. Derek's smirk disappeared. The room tensed. Salespeople exchanged uneasy glances, the air thick with something dangerous. Derek's voice dropped lower, quieter. You sure you want to go there, Marcus? Jordan didn't blink. Already there. For the first time all day, Derek hesitated, his jaw tightening. But then, just as quickly, the arrogance returned, his grin stretching wide and mean. All right, hotshot. You think you can do better? Fine. He stepped back, waving a hand. Be my guest. Jordan turned to the woman, his voice steady, reassuring. Let's find something that actually works for you. Her shoulders sagged in relief, like a weight had been lifted, and she nodded quickly. Thank you. Derek didn't say a word, but as Jordan led her toward the more affordable section, he felt the heat of the man's glare burning into his back. He had just made an enemy, but that didn't matter. Because now, Derek knew exactly what kind of fight he was in for. The tension in the showroom was thick enough to cut with a knife. Jordan could feel the weight of Derek's glare pressing into his back, but he ignored it, focusing instead on the woman beside him. Her shoulders were still tense, her fingers gripping the handle of the stroller just a little too tight. She wasn't used to being defended in places like this. She wasn't used to someone standing up for her against men like Derek. Jordan moved toward the section of the showroom where the used sedans were displayed, his voice steady, deliberate. Let's take a look at some options that make sense for you, he said, keeping his tone calm, reassuring. Something reliable, something within your budget. No pressure. She exhaled a small, shaky breath, nodding quickly. I'd really appreciate that. Behind them, Derek let out a sharp, humorless laugh. Well, would you look at that? His voice carried across the showroom, loud enough for everyone to hear. Our new recruit thinks he's a hero. Jordan didn't turn around, but he could hear Derek's footsteps approaching, slow and measured, the kind of walk meant to intimidate. The rest of the sales team had gone quiet, pretending to be busy but clearly watching, waiting to see how this played out. Even Lisa, standing near her desk, had frozen, eyes darting anxiously between Jordan and Derek. Derek stopped a few feet away, arms crossed, that smug smirk back in place. Let me explain something to you, Marcus, he said, dragging out Jordan's fake name like it was a joke only he understood. This business isn't about what customers want. It's about what we can sell them. And let me tell you something else. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice just enough to make it feel personal. No one comes in here knowing what's best for them. We tell them what's best. That's how it works. That's how we make money. Jordan turned to face him, keeping his expression unreadable, his posture steady. That's how you make money, he corrected, his voice low but firm. By taking advantage of people who don't know any better. By making them believe they don't have a choice. Derek chuckled, shaking his head. And that's why you'll never be more than a bottom-rung salesman. You don't have the guts to do what needs to be done. People like you. He trailed off, letting the words hang in the air, his smirk widening. The implication was clear. Jordan's fingers curled into fists at his sides. He had seen men like Derek his whole life, men who wielded their power like a weapon, who dressed their arrogance in expensive suits and called it success. He had spent years proving men like Derek wrong. And right now, the only thing stopping him from tearing the smirk off Derek's face was the woman standing next to him, watching the exchange with wary eyes. Jordan forced himself to relax, taking a slow breath before turning his attention back to her. He gestured toward a practical, well-maintained sedan, its price tag thousands lower than the one Derek had tried to push on her. This one's a solid choice, he said evenly. Great mileage, strong safety ratings. It won't cost you more than it should. She hesitated, glancing between him and Derek, clearly unsure of what to do. Derek let out another dry laugh, shaking his head. Go ahead, he said, motioning toward the car with an exaggerated flourish. Listen to Marcus here. Drive home in some boring used car. But don't come crying back when you realize you could have had something better. The woman swallowed, her fingers still gripping the stroller handle. Jordan could see the battle happening in her mind, the pressure, the doubt, the fear of making the wrong choice. Derek was betting on that fear. Jordan met her gaze, his voice steady. You don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing what's right for you. Something shifted in her expression. Slowly, she nodded. I think I'd like to test drive this one. Derek's smirk vanished. His jaw tightened just enough for Jordan to see the cracks forming beneath the surface. He wasn't used to losing. Jordan smiled. Good choice. The moment the woman followed Lisa toward the test drive desk, Derek turned on him, stepping closer, his voice a low, seething whisper. You think this is a game? Jordan didn't move. No. I think it's business. Just not your kind. Derek's nostrils flared, and for a moment Jordan thought he might actually take a swing at him. Instead, Derek let out a slow breath, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. All right, he said, his tone suddenly light again. You want to play the long game? Fine. But let me tell you how this ends. You don't last here. You're either gone by the end of the week, or you learn how things really work. Jordan tilted his head slightly. Guess we'll see. Derek scoffed, stepping back, but the anger in his eyes hadn't faded. Jordan had challenged him in front of the whole showroom, and men like Derek never forgot that. As Derek walked away, Jordan glanced around, catching glimpses of the reactions from the other employees. Some looked impressed. Some looked nervous. And Lisa. She gave him a small, knowing nod before turning back to help the woman finalize the test drive. Jordan exhaled slowly, rolling his shoulders. One battle down, but the real fight was just beginning. The silence that followed Derek's retreat was almost as loud as the confrontation itself. The showroom, which had been filled with the murmurs of casual conversation just moments ago, now felt like the aftermath of a gunshot. Jordan could feel the weight of unspoken thoughts pressing down on him, the quick glances from employees who had seen what had just happened but were too afraid to acknowledge it. Lisa was the only one who met his eyes, her expression unreadable, but there was something there, respect, maybe even gratitude. Jordan gave her a slight nod before turning back toward the sales floor, his mind already moving a mile a minute. He had drawn a line in the sand, and Derek wasn't the kind of man who let things go. The next few hours passed in a tense, simmering quiet. Jordan continued observing, watching the way Derek's top salesman operated, the way customers were treated like prey being led to the slaughter. Will, the same smooth-talking salesman who had pushed the elderly man into an overpriced luxury sedan earlier, was at it again, spinning half-truths and psychological pressure into what he called smart business. Jordan clenched his jaw but forced himself to stay silent. He had to pick his battles carefully. But then, just as the day neared its end, Derek made his move. Jordan had been in the break room, sipping from a lukewarm cup of coffee that tasted more like burnt plastic than caffeine, when Derek stepped in, shutting the door behind him with a slow, deliberate click. The air shifted immediately, thick with unspoken hostility. Derek took his time, pouring himself a cup of coffee, stirring it lazily, as if they were just two colleagues having a casual conversation. But Jordan wasn't fooled. He could feel it coming, the way a seasoned fighter could sense the moment just before a punch was thrown. Derek finally turned, leaning against the counter, watching Jordan with that same condescending smirk. "You had a good day today, Marcus." He dragged out the name, emphasizing it like a slur, like something dirty in his mouth. "Got yourself a little fan club going. Even Lisa seems impressed. That's cute." Jordan set his coffee down, keeping his expression neutral. "Just doing my job." Derek chuckled, shaking his head. "See, that's where you're confused. This," he gestured vaguely around the room, "isn't a job. It's a game, and I've been playing it a hell of a lot longer than you." His voice dipped lower, words slow and deliberate. "Now, I don't know where you came from, and I don't care, but I do know your type. Always thinking if you just work a little bit harder, keep your head down, play by the rules, you'll get somewhere." He smirked. "News flash, Marcus. This world doesn't work like that. People like you don't get ahead by playing fair." Jordan's fingers curled against the table, heat rising in his chest. He had spent his entire life proving men like Derek wrong, but there was something different about this moment. Derek wasn't just being a condescending prick. He was making it personal. He was trying to remind Jordan of his place, or at least the place he thought Jordan belonged in. Jordan met his gaze, voice steady. "People like me?" Derek's smirk widened, his tone dripping with mock sympathy. "Come on, man. You think I don't know the hustle? You think I don't see it? Grew up tough, had to grind harder than everyone else just to get a shot. Probably got passed over 100 times by people who didn't deserve it. And now you think you can walk in here, play the hero, and change the rules." He laughed under his breath. "Let me tell you how this ends, Marcus. You keep pulling that righteous act, you're out of here by the end of the week. Hell, I'll make sure of it. But if you wise up, if you fall in line." He took a slow sip of coffee, eyeing Jordan over the rim. "Well, then maybe we can find a way to make you useful." Jordan stared at him for a long moment, something cold and unwavering settling in his chest. He had spent years building his company on integrity, on giving people real opportunities, on never forgetting where he came from. And now he was standing here, face to face with everything he had fought against, everything he had sworn his dealerships would never become. He exhaled slowly, forcing himself to smile. "You done?" Derek's smirk faltered just a fraction. "Excuse me." Jordan straightened, stepping closer, closing the distance between them until they were nearly eye to eye. "You think I don't know exactly who you are?" His voice was calm, measured, but laced with something dangerous. "You've spent so much time stepping on people like me, you forgot something important." Derek scoffed, shaking his head. "And what's that?" Jordan leaned in just enough for his words to land like a blade between Derek's ribs. "We learn how to survive." The silence was deafening. For the first time, Derek's smirk was gone, replaced with something darker, something close to real anger. He had spent years making people fear him, controlling them, bending them to his will. And now, for the first time in a long time, someone was looking him in the eye and not backing down. Jordan grabbed his coffee, took a sip, then turned and walked out, leaving Derek standing there, fists clenched at his sides. It was over, but only for now. Because after tomorrow, Derek Moore wouldn't be in charge of anything ever again. The next morning, the air inside the showroom was different, tighter. The kind of tension that slithered through the room like an unseen force, coiling around the employees as they worked, making their movements stiffer, their voices quieter. They knew something was coming. They just didn't know what. Jordan could feel it too, the way Derek's presence loomed over the showroom like a storm cloud, dark and volatile, waiting for the right moment to strike. But Jordan had already decided this was the moment. No more waiting, no more watching. Today, the game ended. He had spent the night preparing, going through every note he had taken, every interaction he had observed, piecing together the full extent of what Derek had built here. The manipulation, the deception, the outright fraud disguised as good business. He had enough. Enough to make sure Derek never worked another day at Carter Auto. By noon, the entire sales team had been gathered in the main showroom, called together by Derek under the guise of a motivational meeting. Jordan stood among them, arms crossed, waiting. He already knew what was coming. This wasn't a meeting, it was a warning, a spectacle. Derek stepped forward, dressed sharper than usual, his tailored suit pressed to perfection, his watch gleaming under the fluorescent lights. A predator in his finest coat. He let the silence stretch, pacing slowly in front of the employees, eyes sweeping over them like a king surveying his subjects. "I've been thinking," Derek began, his voice calm, almost conversational, "about what kind of people belong in this company, about what kind of mindset we need to have to be successful." His gaze flickered briefly toward Jordan, a ghost of a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "And I realized something. Weakness is contagious. You let one person start questioning the system, and suddenly everyone forgets how this business works. They start thinking too much instead of doing what needs to be done. And I can't have that." Jordan knew exactly what this was. Derek wasn't just reasserting his control, he was setting the stage, preparing to humiliate him in front of everyone, make an example out of him, remind the rest of the team what happened when you crossed the man in charge. Derek stopped pacing, turning to face the group fully. "Which brings me to my next point," he continued, clasping his hands together. "Some of you might have noticed we've had a little disruption lately. Someone who thinks they know better than the people who've been running this business for years. Someone who's more concerned with playing savior than making sales." He turned, locking eyes with Jordan. "Marcus, why don't you come up here?" Jordan didn't move for a second. He could feel the tension in the air thickening, the way people around him stiffened, waiting to see if he would comply. He exhaled slowly, then stepped forward, keeping his posture relaxed, his expression unreadable. Derek smiled like he had already won. "Tell me, Marcus," he said, voice dripping with mock curiosity. "What exactly is your goal here? Because from where I'm standing, you've been spending a whole lot of time worrying about things that aren't your problem." Jordan held his gaze. "You mean like the way customers are being lied to? Pressured into deals that'll cripple them financially? Like the way you run this place on intimidation instead of leadership?" A flicker of annoyance crossed Derek's face, but he covered it quickly, chuckling under his breath. "You really think you're some kind of crusader, don't you? Like you're gonna walk in here and fix everything?" He took a step closer, lowering his voice just enough that only Jordan and the closest employees could hear. "Let me explain something to you, boy." The word hit the air like a slap. A few people inhaled sharply. Lisa's jaw tightened. Even Will, who had spent the entire time smirking from the sidelines, shifted uncomfortably. But Derek just smiled. Jordan's entire body tensed, his pulse hammering in his ears. He had expected Derek to push him, to try and break him down, but this was something else. This was a challenge. A test to see if Jordan would crack, if he would lash out, and give Derek the excuse he needed to bury him. Jordan didn't blink, didn't move. When he spoke, his voice was calm even, but beneath it was something sharper, something that cut through the air like a blade. "You're right, Derek," he said quietly. "I did come here to fix something, and I think now's the perfect time to do it." Before Derek could respond, Jordan reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, tapping the screen a few times before holding it up for everyone to see. The screen was already recording. Derek's smirk faltered for the first time. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Jordan's voice was steady, unwavering, making sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you are. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Employees exchanged glances, some stunned, some relieved, because finally someone was saying it out loud. Derek took a step forward, voice low, dangerous. "You think you can pull this stunt and walk away? You think this is going to end well for you?" Jordan smiled. "Oh, I know it won't end well, just not for me." And then, before Derek could even react, Jordan turned toward the group, lifting his chin slightly, his voice ringing through the room. "My name isn't Marcus Brown." The entire room fell silent. "My name is Jordan Carter, CEO of Carter Auto Group." The silence exploded into gasps. Someone dropped their coffee. Lisa's eyes widened. Will's smirk vanished. But the most satisfying reaction of all, Derek standing frozen in place, his face draining of color as the reality of what had just happened crashed over him like a tidal wave. Jordan turned back to him, watching as Derek struggled to process the situation, to claw his way back into control. His mouth opened, then shut. He looked around, as if searching for some way out, some escape route that didn't exist. Jordan let the silence stretch, let Derek feel it. Then, in a voice that carried through every inch of the showroom, he delivered the final blow. "You're fired." Derek's face twisted, shifting between disbelief and rage. "You can't." "I can," Jordan interrupted, his voice steady, absolute. "And I just did." For a moment, Derek didn't move. His fists clenched, his jaw locked, his entire body thrumming with barely contained fury. Then, with a final sneer, he turned on his heel and stormed toward the exit. The moment the doors swung shut behind him, the weight in the room lifted. Employees looked at each other, some still in shock, some smiling. Lisa exhaled slowly, shaking her head like she couldn't believe what she had just witnessed. Jordan let the moment settle before speaking again. "Things are going to change around here," he said, his voice calm but firm. "No more lies. No more intimidation. No more taking advantage of the people who trust us." He scanned the room, meeting every gaze head-on. "We're rebuilding this company the right way. And if you're not on board with that," he gestured toward the door Derek had just walked out of, "you know where to go." A beat of silence. Then applause. It wasn't loud at first. Just Lisa, clapping slowly, deliberately. Then someone else. And another. And another. Until the entire room was filled with the sound of something Jordan hadn't heard in this dealership all day. Hope. He exhaled, allowing himself a small smile. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. But for the first time in a long time, he knew this was the company he had built. And now, he was taking it back.